There are two NFL franchises in the Bay Area. One of them is playing in the Super Bowl in about a week and a half. Unfortunately, the other one is the Oakland Raiders. A once proud franchise that is now an inconsequential, insignificant, butt of many football-related jokes. The Raiders are trash. Their players are trash. Their coaching is trash. Their front office is trash. Just the whole organization as a whole now is trash. And how sad it is. You know, an organization that has 3 Lombardi trophies to its name. It's a clear example to me of the man, the father of the Raiders, so to speak, Al Davis, not knowing when it was time to move on and not letting go of the team and dragging the team down with him in a spiral of senility before he passed away. Those may sound like harsh words, but it's the truth. Al Davis really, really hurt this organization significantly over the past 6 to 7, 8 years via bad coaching hires, or you hire a coach and fire him right away, terrible trades, terrible draft choices, terrible contracts, paying guys like Tommy Kelly an assload of money for nothing. Any Raider fan really surprised that this team went 4-12 this year, finished 3rd in the AFC West, ended up with the overall pick? I mean, the stupidity of the Raiders organization. When you know you're a team that is nowhere near close to contending, and maybe this is the foolhardiness that is mediocrity. When you have a team, let's say, that's 6-10, 7-9, 8-8, you think if you bring in 1 or 2 veterans, you might make the playoffs. Then once you get in the playoffs, you never know. Well, that's not the case for the Raiders. Yet for some reason, they trade first-round picks for guys like Richard Seymour and Carson Palmer, players that were once very good, but that are on the downside and the wrong side of their career, where you shouldn't be giving up first-round damn picks for them. It's stupid. And stop the Oakland Raiders from doing it. Yeah, you even look at Carson Palmer. Sure, he threw for 4,000 yards this year. You might say on the surface, well, that's kind of impressive. Maybe it was helpful to some of you in fantasy football situations, but the team still went 4-12. It's because they fell behind a lot. Because their offense sucked, and especially their defense really sucked. Look at the offensive side of the ball. They finished 26 in points scored and 28th overall in rushing yards. You sure you had McFadden be hurt again? It always gets so frustrating with Run DMC because you see all this talent, and when he's been healthy, you could see the talent. But he just can't stay healthy, it seems like, for a full damn season. Same way with a guy like a Darius Hayward-Bay. He shows flashes, but it seems like he gets a little nagging injury or two, and he just doesn't realize what his full potential could be. So their offense, boo-boo. Defense, even more boo-boo. 28th in points allowed. Middle of the pack in yards allowed. Second to last, only ahead of the woeful Jacksonville Jaguars pass rush when it comes to sacks. 31st. Yikers. The bottom line is, this is a team that has clearly earned their place at 4-12, clearly earned their place to me in getting the 3rd overall pick. I can't believe with all the coaches they fired in recent years, I had them on a very short leash, guys like Tom Cable, and then especially with the case of Hugh Jackson. How stupid was that? They had Jackson, push for the trade for Carson Palmer. Now he's got his quarterback, which was dumb in and of itself. The Raiders weren't that bad under Hugh Jackson, so they decide to fire him, and you're stuck with Carson Palmer. But Dennis Allen clearly lost this team, lost the locker room, looked overmatched and overwhelmed as a coach. His team goes 4-12, and he keeps his job? What the hell are they drinking in Oakland? Whew. After another abortion of a season for this Raiders organization, they head into the offseason, surely with a lot of questions. They have quite a number of free agents, but only a couple of them, quite frankly, that matter two beans. That's Shane Leckler, their franchise punter. And I say franchise punter with a dead serious face. you sometimes believe fully that the two best players on that team are their kicker, Janikowski, that they once took in the first round. Nobody's laughing at that pick now. And Shane Leckler. Those are their two best players. Their kicker and their punter. Tells you all you need to know about the Raiders. And then Brandon Myers, former sixth-round pick who really came into his own this year. He's probably going to get paid very handsomely. But luckily for the Raiders, guys like Richard Seymour, he had a playing time clause kick in his contract, meaning it voided his contract, so he's now a free agent. A lot of other guys, they just need to move the hell on. They need to totally clean out that locker room because most of the guys they have there suck. I would expect Rolando McClain to be cut because he's a D-bag and he sucks. And most importantly of all, once and for all, for the love of God, get rid of fucking Tommy Kelly. He is a joke. He is ridiculous. How in the hell does he still have a job there? What does he do? What does he do? He's another expense when you're trying to feed the team at the buffet line. He's another fat ass that sits on the bench and laughs when your team's getting its ass kicked. You look at the 5-year draft history of this team, and you wonder why the Raiders suck. Like I said, you had 2 straight years where the Raiders didn't have a first-round pick, and one of those years they didn't have a first or a second-round pick. When you're a team that is in desperate need of rebuilding, you don't give up first-round picks for veterans on the wrong side of their career, and then not to have a second-round pick either is just ridiculous. You've had too many stupid reaches. You know, even Darius Hayward-Bay in 2009, they took him 7th overall. I knew it was coming back then. A lot of other people deep down knew it was coming back then because I was an Al Davis guy. You could have traded back maybe 10 spots and gotten Darius Hayward-Bay and picked up some extra picks. It's all about understanding how the draft game works, or in the Raiders' case, clearly not understanding for many years how the draft game works. Mike Mitchell, second-round safety. Oh, God. Mike Mitchell. Yeah, how'd that work out for you, Oakland? And then you have other guys that have been bust, like Rolando McClain. And I'll give the Raiders credit. You know, it seems like every year they find 1 or 2 nice players later on in the draft. I'm a fan of Jerron Kreiner. I think he's going to be a good player for them. You know, guys like Denarius Moore and Brandon Myers, and there are others too. But, you know, you can't expect to be able to rebuild effectively when you're giving up first-round picks. You're giving up second-round picks. And you make big-time reaches like Darius Hayward-Bay, and especially in the case of guys like Mike Mitchell, or in the last draft, what was it? Or 2011 draft, excuse me, 3rd-rounder, DeMarcus Van Dyke. You know, it's just all of these reaches and all of this crap and these failures in the draft, or even in the case of a Darren McFadden, who was a great talented player that made a lot of sense for you, he just can't stay healthy. This is a big problem. So there are a lot of reasons why the Raiders have been failures. It's dumb contracts given to players that don't deserve it, dumb trades, dumb draft choices. Oakland desperately needs to right their ship before they completely get floated off into a land of NFL oblivion where even the Raiders fans don't give a shit about them anymore. And when it gets better for the Raiders, too, Carson Palmer's been such a great hit that they're actually considering having him and Terrell Pryor, of all people, battle it out for the starting job next year. You know what? You might as well let Terrell Pryor have the starting gig because you didn't win shit with Carson Palmer anyways. Maybe Terrell Pryor, you can catch lightning in a bottle with the proliferation of the spread option in the NFL right now. Maybe you get a little lucky. Roll the dice, Oakland, because what the hell you're doing right now sure as hell isn't working when you get to the offseason philosophy here. Oakland needs to stay away from big free agent acquisitions because they're ultimately going to suck for them. They need to primarily emphasize on rebuilding their team the right way, which is, of course, through what, ladies and gentlemen? The NFL Draft. Now, the good thing for the Oakland Raiders is, you know, while their team has a lot of holes all over the place in both offense and defense, in my opinion, their biggest, most glaring, gaping holes are on the defensive side of the football, especially in the trenches, or you could say the front 7 maybe in general. And this draft, especially for the defensive line part, is very, very talented and very deep as well. I would expect for the Raiders, in terms of their draft philosophy, in terms of who they might take at number 3, assuming they would stay at that pick, you could look at Latulele from Utah, the defensive tackle. You could look at Werner from Florida State, or Moore maybe from Texas A&M. Some of you may be asking about Jarvis Jones from Georgia. I wonder if his medical history is going to cause him to drop a bit on draft day. If he didn't have that medical history, then Jarvis Jones maybe would be a pick here as well. But I look at the Raiders, I would expect with their 3 of their first 4 picks, they're probably going to go tackle end or end tackle, maybe a backup running back in the 3rd round, which I think they desperately need, and then the best available front 7 player that's on the board in the 4th round. They need to. In an offensive-minded division, you've got Peyton Manning in Denver, so that's an offense-first team. You've got Matt McCoy taking over in San Diego. He's going to try and get the most he can still out of Phillip Rivers. That's going to be an offense-first team. And then obviously Andy Reid going to Kansas City, another team that places more of an emphasis now on the offensive side of the football. The best, most effective, and I think easiest way for the Raiders to stand out and to become contenders, at least in the AFC West, because that division is still boo-boo. It doesn't take as much in the AFC West as it would in some other divisions where there's actually depth and talent. The Raiders have to establish a defensive identity. They've got to be fast. They've got to be athletic. They've got to be physical. They've got to be tough. They need great leadership, all on the defensive side of the football. And if you could partner that maybe with a great running game where you can control the clock and you keep the ball out of the hands of Peyton Manning or Phillip Rivers, Oakland has a chance maybe by the time you get to 2014 to be a contender in that division. But it's going to have to start with the draft this year. And they're going to have to hit it right, especially in the trenches and in their drafting, I'm assuming, in the front 7 overall, which will be probably pretty prevalent throughout their draft process. Raider fans, if you're depressed about what's happened to your proud organization since they made that Super Bowl appearance during the 2002 season, there's always hope. That's the great thing about the NFL when it comes to parity. It doesn't take much necessarily. You get a couple of good drafts under your belt, a couple of lucky breaks, and you can be back in the title hunt, so to speak, very, very soon. And ultimately, at some point in time, you would have to think, with Al Davis dead and gone, maybe it's something similar like what happened with the Chicago Blackhawks when longtime owner Bill Fold, as I called him, Bill Fold Wirtz, passed away. He died so that his team could win a Stanley Cup. And a few years after his death, what did they do? They won a Stanley Cup. Well, maybe Father Raider passed away so that way his organization could once again someday soon hoist a Lombardi trophy. There's a long road to haul before you get to that point. They're going to have to find a quarterback at some point, whether that is Terrell Pryor or probably somebody in the draft next year. They're going to have to find a head coach. I don't think Dennis Allen's the guy. But to me, they at least need to get some type of positive momentum going in that organization by hitting it big in the draft this year.